Chapter 4. The first test in regression to following Satan. Once the prison, and the human animals, had been designed and created, and the souls locked inside, God started the teaching and testing process. The first and very simple test was in the Garden of Eden, when the devil tempted Eve, woman, with the apple. The devil told Eve that, if she ate the apple, she would become like God, another lie. Genesis 3, verse 5. Being closer to the devil than Adam, man, on a spiritual level, and having less willpower, the will is the eye of the soul, and therefore more easily used by the devil, she gave in to temptation, disobeyed God and ate the apple. Satan tempted Eve first, instead of tempting Adam, because he knew that she would be more likely to give in than Adam. Eve, having failed her own test, was not content with that, she had to get Adam into trouble, too. The will is the eye of the soul, because the more willpower a soul has to resist temptation, the nearer it is to going home. The Lord measures a soul by its power to resist temptation from Satan, and by the good it does for others. The serpent that tempted Eve was Satan. Revelation 12, verse 9, who, having tricked Eve, causing her to fail her test, then manipulated her and used her to attack Adam. Matthew 10, verse 36, using her sex appeal. Adam then also failed his first test, because he foolishly loved Eve more than God. Matthew 10, verse 37, and doing good, and followed her advice, the devil's really, instead of God's advice. The simple story of Adam, man, and Eve, woman, and the trees of the knowledge of good, God, and the knowledge of evil, devil, seems never to have been understood by anyone on earth, and yet it is very straightforward and easy to understand. God walked in the Garden of Eden with Adam and Eve, and talked with them, teaching them to eat, digest, the knowledge of good, his truth, and warned them not to eat from the tree of the knowledge of evil, Satan's lies, or they would die. They already had access to the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good, and were eating it, and, if they ate from the tree of the knowledge of evil, they would then know that there was good and evil, and become confused. In their confusion, they would never find their way home, and would die. If they obeyed God, there would be no confusion, or conflict, in their minds, and they would learn only good, from God, the tree, or source, of the knowledge of good, truth, quickly and easily, and live forever. As they learned from God's teachings, they would become more and more like Him, until, once they became enough like Him, like Jesus' example, they would be pardoned and then released from this planet, Earth, and allowed to go home, back to their real homes and families, out in the universe, and live forever. God was telling them, in the day that you listen to that liar again, instead of to me, eat from the tree, source, of the knowledge of evil, lies, you will die. Genesis 2, verse 17 and Deuteronomy 30, verse 15. The serpent, Satan the liar/devil, told Eve that God was lying to her, and that if she believed him, instead of God, she would be like God, which, of course, coming from the liar, devil, was a lie. Eve believed the liar, devil, instead of God, and convinced Adam to believe the liar too, repeating, for a second time, the original sin that had caused the war, and, from that day, exactly as God, the truth/word. John 1, verse 1-5, told them, people have been dying ever since. So God told you the truth, as he always does, and Satan deceived you all, yet again. Revelation 12, verse 9, as he still does today. So the war, that Lucifer started in heaven, with his slanderous lies, has continued, in a war between good, God, and evil, devil, here on earth, ever since, killing billions of human bodies. By believing the liar/devil, instead of God, Adam, man, and Eve, woman, were calling God a liar/devil, and the liar/devil God. God says, woe to those who call good, God, evil, devil, and evil, good. Armageddon Survival Plan, the key. For printed version please contact JAH at jahtruth.net. Thus began the confusion and chaos in people's minds that has continued ever since, the conflict in not knowing what is good/truth, and what is evil/lies, only that they both exist, and the ongoing insanity. Insanity is choosing to believe that a lie is true, and that the truth is a lie. The only way to live is to stop listening to the liar, devil, and believe only God, as Abraham did, and thereby became the friend of God. 2 Chronicles 20, verse 7 and Isaiah 41, verse 8, James 2, verse 23. Jesus' true teachings are designed to reverse the fall of man, by being born again as your spirit, being. John 3, verse 5 and 6. Your real self, keeping the commandments, doing God's will, learning directly from God how to be perfect, like God, in His eyes, not man's eyes. Jesus, the Word/truth made flesh. John 1, verse 1-5, is also known as the second Adam, to reverse the fall, caused by the first Adam believing Satan. In the Garden of Eden there was no work, only learning, everything else was provided by God. Woman, Eve, created work, by listening to Satan, and has been doing so ever since. God's first commandment, it is the first, because it is the most important, states that you must love God, first, above and beyond everything else, and love Him with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind, and with all your strength, every ounce of it. Mark 12, verse 30, and Him only shall you serve. Matthew 4, verse 10. Adam started a tradition that has survived for thousands of years, which is, loving woman first, and God, good, second, thereby breaking the first and most important commandment, upon which all the others hang. This has caused, and still is causing, most of the trouble in the world, and God will allow women to continue punishing men, with heartache, etc., until man learns to put God, pure love first, and woman, sex, second, or he runs out of time, whichever comes first. Men must learn to do God's will, and not woman's will, which is often actually Satan's will. He manipulates the souls that are locked inside women's bodies, to pull the souls locked inside men's bodies back to earth, and keep them here in prison, or the world will continue to accelerate in a backwards direction. Amos 4, verse 1 and Isaiah 3, verse 12-24. Women persuade men to do evil for them, for sex, which can mean cheating on, or leaving their wives and families, killing, stealing, fighting, or working themselves to death, just to buy worldly, and therefore temporary treasures for them. To quote The Picture of Dorian Gray, by Oscar Wilde, referring to women, as spoken by a friend of Dorian, they have got it, we want it, and people are making millions in between. Revelation 18, verse 3-20. Instead of doing these evil things, men should be learning to be like Jesus, and doing God's will, and should be working for God, by fighting against evil, wherever and whenever he finds it, for the benefit of all mankind, and, at the same time, he will be setting a good example, for others to follow, especially his children. Matthew 10, verse 37-38, Surah 9, verse 23 and 24. His wife's place is to take care of the children, and to feed him and keep his clothes and home clean, and to give him moral support, to keep him going, so that he can earn his right to go home. If she does this, she is also going forward, towards becoming a perfect lady, wife and mother, eventually earning the right to be a man. Behind every great man, there is a relatively good woman. Men must learn not to break the commandments, and then, to use his superiority of strength, both mental and physical, gently, along with his better understanding of spiritual love, to persuade woman not to break the commandments either. If not, the world will continue to go backwards, until God has no alternative, except to destroy all the evil souls. Don't fool yourselves into thinking that you are good. You are not. Isaiah 64, verse 6 and 7. If you were good, you would not be here, you would already have gone home. God does not keep good people in prison. It is impossible for man to do what he should, until he learns to worship pure love, God, instead of sex, one of the devil's weapons, and to know the difference between the two. Jesus gave his love to the world, instead of to a woman, pure and unselfish spiritual love, as opposed to selfish animal love, emotion, and voluntarily made himself into a eunuch, metaphorically. Matthew 19, verse 12, third type, for God and the world's sake. The other reason that he was alone, was because, loving a woman, in a personal relationship, would have created a conflict of interests, and it would have interfered with his mission. A good soldier always puts his mission first, even above and before his own life. A man has to do what a man has to do. A wife, or mother, will try to stop a man from doing what he has to do, using her husband's, or son's, love for her, as a lever, to try to stop him from doing anything that may endanger his life, or her selfish material comfort and happiness. It would have been, and was, the same for Jesus, and his mission was so difficult, that he could not allow a woman to get in the way of his being crucified. Also, it would not have been fair on any woman, so Jesus chose to be alone, demonstrating total unselfishness in choosing to hurt himself by being alone, rather than hurting someone else who loved him, self-crucifixion. Therefore, during his mission, Jesus separated himself from the female members of his family, as much as was possible. God has always used men to do his work, and to be his messengers, prophets, and all of Jesus' disciples were men. God created man, not woman, in his own image. Why? Satan has always used woman to do his work, starting with Eve, trying to stop God's plans, by trying to persuade man not to do what is right, by using man's love for woman, against man. 1 Timothy 2, verse 14. Man was told, by God, from the beginning. Genesis 3, verse 16 and 17, that woman was not and could never be his equal, and God has reminded man repeatedly, ever since. 1 Corinthians 11, verse 1 to 16, Surah 2, verse 228 and Surah 4, verse 34. That is why man has kept woman down, and in her correct place, for all these thousands of years. Job 2, verse 9 and 10. Having failed the first, very simple test, Adam and Eve were expelled from the security of the Garden of Eden. If they had obeyed God, and not Satan, and had passed the test, there would be no problems in the world today. Without knowledge there would be no nuclear weapons, pollution, or hunger, etc. Woman was punished, not only for failing her own test, but for then causing Adam to fail his. This punishment took the form of having to suffer great pain, in childbirth, because she had used her sex to persuade Adam, man, to disobey God, and Eve, woman, has been doing it all day, everywhere, to everyone, ever since. Sex leads to childbirth and great pain, which should also act as a deterrent to sex, to try to teach women to look for love, instead of sex, that is God, instead of the devil. After the expulsion from Eden, the devil used women, as he has continued to do successfully, throughout the history of the world, to create problems, or aggravate existing ones. The population gradually increased and more souls were sent, from the astral plane, to use the new bodies, and, because people listened to Satan, instead of listening to God, the world became more and more evil. Eventually, it became too evil, and God had to decide what to do, to try to put everyone back on the right path. The simple story of Adam's sons, Cain and Abel, seems also never to have been understood. God told Cain and Abel, after their parents had already been disobedient, that the only offering he would accept from them was a lamb, foreshadowing the Lamb of God, Christ and his self-crucifixion. Abel obeyed God and brought a lamb, exactly as he was told to do, and was accepted. Cain, just like his parents, disobeyed God and he brought the fruit of the earth, and was rejected. In other words, unless you approach God, exactly as he has told you to do, I am the way, no man comes to the Father, except by me, the Lamb of God. John 14, verse 6, and not as your parents and siblings have done, you will be rejected. People say that there are many paths to God, And there are thousands of different religious doctrines, all claiming theirs is the right and only one, but there are thousands of them. God says there is only one way. John 14, verse 6, and that very few there be that find it. Matthew 7, verse 14. Jesus has told you, in Revelation 12, verse 9, that Satan has deceived the whole world, all of you, because you are all trying to approach God your own way, like Cain did, and have been rejected. Go away from me, you who work iniquity, I do not know you. Matthew 7, verse 23 and Matthew 25, verse 11, 12, and 41. Why call ye me Lord, Lord, and do not do the things that I say? Matthew 7, verse 21 and Matthew 25, verse 11 and Luke 6, verse 46 and Luke 13, verse 25. The people who say that there are many paths to God, and or that theirs is the right one, are all calling God a liar. Revelation 12, verse 9 and Matthew 7, verse 15, so you know what is going to happen to them. Woe unto those who call good, truth, evil, lies, the fire. Isaiah 5, verse 20, Matthew 25, verse 41. God told Abel and Cain the only way, and unless you do it exactly, in minute and exact detail, the way God has told you, you will be rejected, just like clever, disobedient Cain was. Abel in humble, loving trust and obedience brought his lamb. Cain in arrogant disobedience, thinking he knew best and could do as he liked, was rejected, even though he brought more than Abel did. Remember, they were, like you are, condemned prisoners and had already been kicked out of the Garden of Eden, for disobedience, and unless you do exactly as you are told, and learn to be good, you are going to be executed. The word Abel means the breath of life, and the word Cain means possessions, in Hebrew. Cain slew Abel, in English, possessions slew the breath of life. Jesus said, Matthew 6, verse 24, you cannot serve God and mammon, money, materialism and possessions, because if you love one, you will hate the other. In other words, materialism and selfishness destroy good and spirituality, life, and bring spiritual death, the fire. Human society can never work, because it is based on human selfishness. A kingdom or house divided can never stand. Democracy, politics, parliament, families and society. Matthew 12, verse 25. If you have 100 people and you are one of them, and everyone is out for theirself, you can have nothing but violence and war, with the strong victimizing and oppressing the weak, the rich doing the same to the poor, and the clever doing likewise to the not so clever. If, however, you have the same 100 people and you are one of them, and every single one of them puts everybody else first, and his or herself second, then, every single person, including you, gains 99 times. It will only work if every single person does it, otherwise, the one who doesn't, steals everything from the others. Sound familiar? One bad apple ruins the whole barrel. So far it has never been realized by man, and there has never been peace on earth,